Yes!
If you haven't been paying attention to any of the Destiny 2 news, Bungie released a director's cut in which they talked about their plans in regards to the future of Destiny 2. And the most prominent thing to me is when they talked about how legendary weapons will have lifespans. This apparently means that every legendary weapon in the game would meet a point in time where they'll no longer be able to be infused past a certain point. And now that I think about it, I remember something very similar happened in Destiny 1. Back in D1, the Taken King DLC kicked off year 2, and every legendary weapon, armor piece, and some exotics were literally left behind in year 1. See, infusion didn't exist in D1 until the Taken King DLC released, meaning that everything present in the game before year 2 had no way of increasing its power past 160, I believe, which was the highest power level for all year 1 weapons and armor. And when this happened, I didn't have that big of a problem with it because I returned to Destiny 1 about 2 months after the Taken King DLC release from roughly a 6-month hiatus. So it was pretty refreshing to return to the game after being away for so long and have access to so many new weapons and armor. D1 year 1 had some good nostalgic moments, but the game eventually got boring, which led to my hiatus. But when I came back, I was excited to grind for some brand new weapons, and even though I had some favorites from year 1, I was cool with retiring them and getting an entirely new arsenal. But that was back in Destiny 1, and even though Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 are part of the same franchise, the games have some very, very discernible differences. For one, random rolls and double trait perks was something that was present in Destiny 1 from the start, whereas in Destiny 2's first year, all weapons had static rolls and 1 perk. Double trait perks and random rolls on weapons didn't see the light of day in Destiny 2 until the Forsaken DLC release, which kicked off year 2 of Destiny 2. So when you think about it, D1 and D2 both had a way of starting the game over via the DLC that started the game's second year, but they would perform very differently. The Taken King DLC refreshed Destiny 1 because the first year had a lot of problems, and the game underwent a huge identity crisis, and Bungie did their best to give us the game that Destiny 1 should have been when the Taken King DLC came out. Forsaken rebooted Destiny 2, but by giving us the attributes and elements from Destiny 1 that made Destiny 1 so great. Destiny 1 had these elements in its first year, but made them better, while Destiny 2's first year was a bunch of poorly implemented ideas that nobody asked for and didn't work for the game, so they returned in the second year. The main difference is that infusion existed in Destiny 2's first year, whereas it did not exist in Destiny 1's first year. Now all of this seamlessly connects to what was quoted in the director's cut in the form of, okay, let's talk more about weapons, and let's begin with how weapons have worked in Destiny 2. All the way back to Destiny 2 vanilla, every weapon you get is a weapon you can keep and infuse to raise its power level indefinitely. Okay, so yeah, it's 100% true that you can infuse your weapons from year 1 and still use them in present day Destiny 2. But let's be real here, and this is one of your absolute favorite weapons. Nobody is going to use a year 1 weapon over a year 2 weapon. Seriously. As stated previously, year 1 weapons had static rolls, and for the exception of Trials of the Nine and the Leviathan Raid and the Leviathan Raid Lairs, they all had 1 single trait perk. Also, year 1 weapons can't take mods and don't have year 2 masterwork, so they're inferior in almost every aspect to year 2 and beyond weapons. So yeah, you could infuse your year 1 weapons and still use them, but again, why would you? So using year 1 weapons past year 1 is different in Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. Year 1 D1 weapons were only less viable because they lacked the ability to infuse, and that was literally it. Because aside from that, year 1 weapons were pretty much on par with year 2 weapons. Again, I'm referring to Destiny 1. Let's keep it 100%, ladies and gentlemen. Bungie usually does their best to make decisions to benefit the health and longevity of the game, I think. And even though we may not agree with a lot of their decisions, we eventually get over it and continue playing the game anyways. And I'm not one of those people because I do my best to think outside the box and try to see the benefits of something, even if I don't agree with it. But unless Bungie has some sort of amazing mitigation methods for retiring weapons, I see a lot of cons in regards to legendary weapons having limited lifespans. Aside from stating that weapons will usually have about a 9 to 15 month lifespan, we don't know if that applies to literally every legendary weapon in the game or not. My biggest gripe with this is that it'll be impossible to do this and for the activities that certain weapons drop from to remain relevant. Destiny 2 already has a huge problem with so much to do in the game but no reason to do it, and I feel that doing this would worsen that problem. Think about it. Why would you run the Reckoning aside from trying to get an amazingly rolled spare rations? What about all the times you played the Garden of Salvation raid to get a perfectly rolled Sacred Providence? I really don't understand how any of these activities will remain relevant and engaging if everything that drops from them won't be capable of being infused past a certain point. Because to me, it sounds like we're going to run into the same issue with year 1 weapons and how they pale in comparison to weapons released in year 2 and beyond. We realize that all year 1 weapons have static rolls, and unfortunately some of them have remained this way and haven't ever received the random rolls treatment. All of the strike exclusive weapons from year 1 are basically pointless, and nobody in their right mind will ever be playing the life out of the Tree of Probabilities Nightfall for the DFA hand cannon like they would for the Mindbender's Ambition shotgun and the Hollowed Lair Nightfall, because once again, DFA is a static roll and Mindbender's Ambition has random rolls. Like I said before, if you make the loot in an activity pointless, the activity itself becomes pointless as well. In the director's cut, Bungie basically stated that they wanted to give us a reason to use the new weapons that they introduced in each DLC, and I 100% understand that. Admittedly, it does get boring using the same weapons all the time. That's why I never understood anybody that exclusively uses the meta, especially if it's something like Dust Rot Blues, Not Forgotten, and Warcliffe Coil, which is one of the oldest Year 2 loadouts. Now, reasons like this are why I was so accepting of the fact that the Taken King DLC was a complete refresher for Destiny 1. I mean, I definitely did have favorite weapons from Year 1, but I wasn't so adhered to them to the point where I couldn't find something else I would like in Year 2. But making our current favorites less potent than the new stuff will only work if Bungie really cracks down on the variety of weapon archetypes that they introduce. For example, when it comes to weapons with random rolls, there are no kinetic 540 RPM pulse rifles or 450 RPM pulse rifles in the energy slot. And I'm aware of the random rolls version of the Infinite Pass 8, but this weapon is only going to be around for Season 9 unless Bungie has plans of bringing it back later. Like a lot of Destiny 2 players, I develop relationships with my weapons. I'm assigned to weapons that sound, feel, and look a particular way, and after using them for a prolonged period of time, I become very comfortable with them to the point where I usually always perform well with them. Chattering Bone and Horus Lease are two of my favorite weapons for PvP, and I'm aware that and agree with the fact that they aren't meta and might not be anywhere near as viable as the most dominant and best performing weapons in the Crucible, but I feel comfortable using them. And my biggest fear is that when all of my weapons can't be infused past a certain point, I'll basically be forced to use a bunch of weapons and or archetypes that I don't care for. I'm all for being experimental with weapons and whatnot, but I've been playing Destiny long enough to know what my favorite weapon archetypes are, and that isn't going to change if I'm being blatantly honest. However, if Bungie focuses on creating a variety of weapons, I won't have a problem with vaulting my current favorites in favor of using the new stuff. But there's also a part of me that's a bit worried because when new weapons come out, I only like some of them, and it's very seldom that I'll use any of them. Bungie probably feels that it's pointless to release new weapons if barely any of them are ever going to be used, and they probably feel that they're wasting their time releasing new weapons if we're going to continue using the weapons we've had for a while. And if I'm being 100% honest, we, the players, will be more inclined to use the new stuff if Bungie uses that same energy that they used when they created the Saint 14 themed weapons in Season 9. I'll be honest when I say that these are some of the best looking weapons ever created in Destiny 2, and I guarantee you that anybody would agree with that. Patron of Lost Causes, Breach Light, Trophy Hunter, the list goes on. But these are some amazing weapons, and we as a community felt inclined to use them because not only do they look and perform amazingly, they also roll the newest perks introduced in Season 9, and I was happy to finally find a sidearm that I really enjoy using in the form of the Breach Light. So once again, if Bungie is able to replicate the success of the Season 9 weapons, then whatever happens, happens. But if not, then you're gonna have a lot of angry people upset with the realization that they can't use their favorite weapons and activities where power level matters, especially if Bungie somehow manages to create a bunch of weapons that are negatively received. If the goal is for us to use the newer weapons, I completely understand, but forcing us to do it is a completely different story. And we've been asking for a vendor refresh for seemingly forever. And it's pretty sad to know that there are a ton of Year 1 weapons that still haven't received the random rolls treatment almost 2 or 3 years later. Honestly, I can safely speak for the rest of the fan base when I say that if Bungie is going to create a bunch of new weapons that might not ever get used, why not repurpose some of these older weapons instead? Seriously, I said earlier that if the loot in an activity is pointless, the activity itself also becomes pointless. But what if DFA, Silicon Aroma, and Duty Bound had random rolls? I'll give you the answer. You would see a lot more people excited for Tree of Probabilities, the Pyramidion, and Savathun's Song being the weekly Nightfall rotation. And this would be very, very good for the game because strikes outside of the Nightfall ordeal and those with strike exclusive weapons with random rolls don't see any type of play. Alright everybody, that does it for this one. Once again, I don't agree with Bungie's decision to retire older weapons in favor of new ones, but we'll have to see what happens when it's time to cross that bridge. In the comment section, tell me how you feel about weapons being retired and if you feel that this would be beneficial for the game or not. If you made it to the end of this video, enjoyed what you watched, do me a favor and thumb rest of that like button till it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you won't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over now. Y'all take it easy.